Today, he'll be showing us the unique things that Flexi can do for direct-to-garment and direct-to-film printing. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have, either about this topic or any other Flexi topic. So feel free to put those questions in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything Bobby discusses or share it with someone else, we'll be sending you the link this afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. And with that, we're ready to get started. So Bobby, take it away.
Thanks, Annette. I appreciate it. Okay. Well, a couple of things we're going to try to get done today is look at the DTF, DTG market and how Flexi can help you with that. A couple of things that I want to make sure everybody understands on this. Every DTG and DTF printer handles white and CMYK a little bit differently. So I'm going to be demoing it with one of the printers that I know fairly well is the CobraFlex DTF printer, which actually prints the white, and it actually prints an adhesive. So it wouldn't be one that you would be using with the shaker version. But if anybody else, you know, while we're on here, if you want to throw out a printer that's on here, I might be able to load it and see how it would handle white ink as well. But they all basically do it the same way. You just got to make sure how the spot colors are set up and different things like that. So, and then one of the other things that most DTF printers do is they actually have a second driver that sends the job directly to the printer. So in Flexi, you're creating the file and you're ripping the file in Flexi, but you're sending it to a file, not to the printer directly. So you print to file, and I'll show you what that means here in a second, but you're going to print to file, and then you're going to go to the printer program that comes with the printer itself, and then open that file, which is a PRT file, a print file, and you're going to open that file directly in the print driver and then send it directly to the printer. So Flexi creates the file, rips the file, and then you're going to take that ripped PRT file into the print software, print driver software, and send it directly to the printer from there. So hopefully you'll understand that as I go through here. I don't have any print software for any specific printers. Like I believe STS printers also do that exact same thing as you print it to a file, and then the STS print driver sends it directly to the printer. So let's get started here. So one of the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a basic file or bring a file in here. Actually, let me start on this side of it. Let's start with the production manager, because this is where most of the stuff is going to be done for the DTG, DTF market printers. Okay. You can bring a file. A lot of times you're going to have files that you've already made, or you've downloaded something from the internet, or you have a PDF, a JPEG, a PNG file. I will tell you, PNG files, transparent PNG files, work the best for anything you're going to be bringing directly into the production manager. You can create those in Adobe Illustrator. You can create them in Flexi, and I'll show you how to create a transparent PNG out of Flexi here in just a few minutes. But the thing you want to be able to do, all right, so we've got our printer loaded in here and we're ready to go. So we're just going to add a job directly to the printer. And I've got a couple of jobs in here. Some are PDFs. And this one, like I said, a transparent PNG, which is what this is right here. And it brings it right in directly to the production manager. Now, the beauty about a transparent PNG is it already knows where the background is, and you don't have to do anything to create the transparent background. So with that in here, I'm going to double click on the job. So we'll bring it up here. And then here's my job. There it is right there. And this is where you can resize it, different things like that. This printer only has a 24-inch media width. So I could do multiple copies, different things like that here if I wanted to, change the spacing and that kind of stuff. But let's kind of work through our tabs here on this. So again, this is a standard Flexi tab, after output. You want to change this to after output hold so the job doesn't go away after it's ripped and printed. Now this is an important tab. because this is kind of the way that it's handling the white ink. So on every printer, this page here will look a little bit different. Like a Mamaki printer that has white ink looks different from an HP printer with white ink, which looks different than this Cobra Flex printer with white ink, which will probably look different from an Anajet or one of the other things like that. So for example, spot 1 and spot 2. Now, I have not added any spot colors to this job whatsoever. I just opened it up as a file. And I'm going to show you how to add the white ink layer to it without even having to have a white layer. You don't have to create the white layer in Illustrator like you do with some other programs and that kind of thing. So while these say spot color or undercolor, I'm just going to leave this as spot color because these really aren't going to be used in this file the way I'm doing it. We'll use this a little bit later with another example that I have. So again, as you come through here, tile, labels and marks, one of the things that some printers like to have you do is to add color bands to the edge and to the sides to make sure. So I'm going to put on this one, I'm going to put it, say, on the right-hand side and maybe at the bottom. So it's actually going to print a color band to make sure all your printers are printing, your colors are printing correctly as the job comes through. Okay. So you can do something like that right here. The other tabs as we go on through here, this is just color settings. Now, this tab right here is going to be an important tab, which is the preview the output channel. And we'll come back to that here in a minute, and I'll show you how you use this. This is just your step and repeat modes. This is more for banners and that kind of stuff. Color object control, we're not going to be using that on this. But this last tab, this is a brand new tab for Flexi 22. And this is what makes the DTF, DTG market work so well with the Flexi software. So you're going to want to open up the job and come right here to the transparency tab. Now, one of the things we can do, because this is a transparent PNG, this white background right there is going to not be there. And what does that mean? Well, if you'll notice down here, it says use the alpha channel for your white. Well, because it's a transparent PNG, it's got an alpha channel. So I can check that block right there. And I'm going to tell it to use the transparency mask for my white layer. So I've told it to use white. And so it's going to use the outline of this skull as my white layer. So now, how do we know that it's done that? Okay, well, that's where this output channel preview tab comes in. We're going to come back here. We're going to check the preview the output channel. And you'll notice it's showing my cyan that it's got in there right now. Well, I'm going to uncheck the cyan. Well, we'll check magenta, and you'll see it's just kind of adding all those colors in there. You just got a little preview of it. So let's uncheck all those colors, and let's see what's going to print for white, which is spot 1. And that is what it's going to print for my white. So there is my white layer that it's going to print in that file. So let's go back to the transparency tab and let's actually change this to something different. Instead of using the transparency mask, if I said under solid, so what it's going to do now is it's going to print white anywhere that there's a solid color. So where his teeth are with the white area there, it is not going to print white there. So let's go back and take a look at that. Boom, there it is. So where the white was for the teeth, it did not print anything with it saying under color. So we're able to do all this in the production manager without having to create a spot color or a spot layer or anything else. Makes it very easy. So you can just bring an image directly off the internet, drop it into here, and create a color like that. Now, what happens, for example, though, if it is not a transparent PNG? Well, let's bring in another example and let's take a look at that and see what happens. So I'm going to bring in, I've got this Batman. It's a Batman PDF right here. So let's go ahead and open this up. And here it is. Okay, so you'll notice now when I come to my transparency tab, I don't have that use alpha channel block right here. That's because this is not a transparent PNG. It's just a PDF with a white background to it. So the one thing I have to do now is I have to get rid of that white background to create my transparency. Well, what we've done is we've actually allowed you to be able to do that very easily. So if you copied and pasted something off the internet, you could come in here and you make sure that create a transparent background is checked. And then I'm just going to click this white area right here of the background, and it's going to get rid of the white background. Now you'll notice it didn't do a great job completely. I've still got some white edges around there. That's because this image had a little bit of color in that edge right there. So what you can do is you can increase the tolerance on here. And as you'll notice, the higher I pull this up, I'm going to pull this up to probably about there. And that's gotten rid of most of that white edge. There's still a little bit in here. And if I actually hold my shift key down and click this little section right here, now it gets rid of that section as well. So now I've gotten rid of my background. So now I have a transparency mask. So let's come back here, use the transparency mask. Let's go to our preview tab, preview the output channel, and boom, there's my white layer. So that is how you can create a white layer with a PDF, with a JPEG, with a PNG. But again, the transparent PNG is the easiest because all you have to do is click that little button at the bottom and you are done. Okay. You don't have to get rid of the background. The one thing I will tell you that in getting rid of the background here, sometimes it will leave a little bit of a fuzzy edge when you do use the transparency wand, trying to get rid of this. Sometimes you may have a little bit of white showing in there still, even if you pull that tolerance all the way, you know, up here as high as you can go. So it is much cleaner to create it as a transparent PNG than it is to do it using the wand, but either one will work. And again, under solid or variable under. Now we have a bunch of different options on here. So let's kind of use the Batman logo to show you some of the options. So you see there's a little bit of white in the Batman. So if I did under solid, you'd have probably a few holes inside of him here. Actually, that still looks pretty good, pretty solid on that one. But let's come back here and let's do a variable under. Now, what variable under does is it adds more white based on the background color, okay? And it'll use less white based on the background color also. So let's come back here and take a look at what it's going to do with our white layer now. As you see, the darker the color, the more white it puts down, and the lighter the color, the less white it puts down. So that's one of the options you can do with that. And you can even do inverted variable under, okay, which will pretty much do the opposite of what we just did. And as you see, so if you have a shirt where that it's got a lot of black in it and you don't want white underneath the black as much, but you need white in some of these lighter shade areas to fill in right there, this would be a great way to do that. That way your blacks have very little white in them, but your lighter colors have white behind them so that they will come through if you're putting it on a darker shirt or something like that. Okay, let's see. What else have we got here? Now, spot color. Because this file has no spot colors, when I come back here, you will see there is no white whatsoever generated by that. Okay. And then the last one is use driver settings. Well, using the driver settings, when I tell it to use driver settings, that comes back here to this tab that we had before. Okay. Now we also have options here in the driver settings that are a little bit different than those. So one of them is under color. And let's go take a look and see what that does. So under color again that's doing a variable under color. Let's make sure that was so under color. Let's do, if I do substrate, okay. What the substrate is going to do for me is it's going to make this entire block a block of white. So the whole image, if you do substrate, whatever the exterior of the file, it's just going to print a block of white, and then it's going to put your image on top of it. May not necessarily be very useful in the DTG area, but occasionally, if you're doing a solid print, then maybe this a photograph or something that's a square print, this might work out pretty well. And then fill substrate. This one is a little bit different as well. What this one does, oh, that's the variable under. I was thinking that was going to do it a little bit different. Let's go under solid. So all these, I'm always kind of a little bit curious as to what happens when I select all the different ones. And based on your image, you're just going to have to go through here and figure out which one of these gives you the best look that you're looking for. But the beauty about this is it will allow you to be able to preview what your white's going to do before you send the job. So that way you're not wasting film or shirts or anything like that, wondering how's this white going to print. You're actually going to know exactly what it's going to do right here. So what this does, it prints white everywhere in the white outline and then just does a variable white in the image itself. Again, just depends on the image and your print. You need to make that determination. All right. So now we've done that and brought those in. That's going to be probably, you know, so if you're using Illustrator to design or Corel or any of those kind of things like that, you can actually create those files and bring them in here and do this just like that. Okay. But what happens, let's go back to Flexi and actually create a job with a spot color. Let's say you've got something with white ink in it. Okay. So you have, and let's bring Batman in here. Let's see, where is my, let's go up a level. And let's go ahead and bring Batman in here and say we have that. And then we're going to create some text underneath here. And we've got something like that. And let's make this a little bit bolder text, something like that. Oops, I've got to highlight it first. Arial black. There we go. Okay. So now we're on the Flexi design side of it. Okay. And what I've done is I've got Batman here. Okay. And I'm just going to add a little bit of background here so you can kind of see what's going on. So as you see, Batman's got a white background here. Okay. And then just so you understand the difference in this, I'm going to bring in this my little skull that I had here, and you'll see the difference. So when I bring that transparent PNG skull into Flexi, there is no white background around it. That's because it was made as a transparent PNG. Okay. So that is the difference in how those files are seen by the production manager. So this kind of gives you a visual idea of what's going on with those. All right. So we'll get rid of that one here. All right. So with Batman now, with it here, I want to actually make this text. I want to be able to just print this text white letters, and then be able to print Batman here. So what I want to do is I want to actually make this as a transparent PNG. So what I'm going to have to do right now in Flexi is get rid of this background. And we can do that right inside of Flexi as well versus doing it in the production manager. So I'm going to highlight the image, go to bitmap, go to make transparent. And then this is kind of the same thing I did over in the production manager. You'll notice my tolerance is a little low here. Let's pull this up to like 40. And what you'll notice is this does a little bit better job than the production manager of getting rid of the white around the edge. So anywhere you see those marching ants is where it's going to be getting rid of that white background. And then I'm going to click my check mark. So now you'll notice I've gotten rid of the background. I have this, and then I'm going to actually make these letters white. So now they're white letters. You've got Batman with no background. And then you'll notice when I do this, you actually can't see those letters anymore. So you don't really know if they're there or not. But let me just select this right now. And the easiest way to do this is to export this out as a transparent PNG. If I try to send this through the Flexi rip and print, it will not make those white letters into a transparency mask, I would have to make them as a spot color, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a few minutes. But what we've got here is Batman with the white letters. So I'm going to my export button, which is right here. I'm going to export. And then we're going to come in here, and I want to tell this to be a PNG, which is one of our options here. And I'm going to tell this to do, we'll call this Batman PNG, so we'll know exactly what it is. I'm going to uncheck this suppress options. We don't want it to suppress any options. We want it to give us all the options for saving this file, and I'll show you what that does here in a second. So we've made it Batman PNG, and when I click save, this is where we get our options. If you had that suppress options button checked, you would not get this. So we want to tell it that we want to make it a transparency, and let's do it at 300 DPI just so we have a little bit larger file size. And this is kind of giving you the projected size of it. If I'd made it, 72, it's only going to be 4. So we want that to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to make it 300 here. And then I'm going to click OK. So there we go. Let's wait until it finishes here. And you saw it rasterizing it and doing it right down there in the bottom. All right. So now, hopefully we're done. So now let's go back here to our Flexi again. Now, I have just made this into, again, I keep saying it, transparent PNG. Let's add this in. There's the Batman PNG. I'm going to bring this in here. There's the file. Doesn't look any different than the other one. However, when I double click on it and then come over here to my transparency tab, you'll notice use the alpha channel for white. I have to tell it to use that as the transparency mask. So let's go here and look at our preview. And spot 1. And there is the Batman and the white, and I had to do nothing other than check that block. Now, one of the things I want to also share with you, which will make it a little bit easier, is creating a preset and setting the default job properties. So if most of the jobs you're going to be bringing in are going to be like this, I can actually come up here. I've got a button up here called presets. Okay. So I'm actually going to close this job because it won't work specifically on this job. So I'm going to come up here to my my default job properties, which is where we were at the beginning. I'm going to go to my default job properties here, and I'm going to come to this transparency tab, and I'm going to tell it to check this block right here for use the alpha channel, and I'm also going to change it to use transparency mask. You will also notice right here, and this is something I forgot to point out a little while ago, you actually can change the density of the white. So if you don't need 100% white behind your file, you actually can reduce that right here. Like if you wanted 50% white behind, say that Batman, which was really dark, you didn't need quite as much white behind it, you could actually drop that back right here. Okay. Just want to make sure you saw that on there as well. Okay. So I'm saying to use the alpha channel for white for spot 1, and I'm telling it to use the transparency mask. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to click save as, and I want to make sure that all my layers are selected. I've also come in here. Let's actually, hang on, let me do one more thing. I want to come in here and set it to print those color bands on the right and the bottom. I'll tell you what, let's just put them on the bottom for right now. So it prints those. I'm going to hit apply. And then we are going to save that. And we'll call this PNG white print. And say OK. So now we've got it set to use our transparency mask, our alpha channel for white. All that's ready to go. It's going to hold it after it prints it. Here's our media width, all that. So we are ready to go now. So whenever I bring a file in, so for example, let's come back here to this file right here. I can actually come up here and with one click of a button, PNG white, all my settings are now ready to go. It didn't save that. Why didn't it save that one? Apparently I didn't check that correctly. Let's click save on that. So hopefully it saves that now. So when we click that, and then we come over here, preview our output channel, and there is our spot white. So that makes it much easier for changing your white options. You can create as many presets as you want in here, or even just set it as the default job properties. That way, if you're using a spot color, you can tell it to use spot. If you're using a PNG, you can come in here and tell it to have this checked. So you can come in here and reset all of these options and then save them as a preset so that very quickly you can just select that and it will apply it to the job for you. All right. So that is how we are taking care of that. Now, I don't know if there were any questions so far on any of the stuff that I did as far as that goes. So I will just kind of keep going here. So one of the things that we need to be able to do then is you may need to be able to print an image with a white or a spot color on it. Okay. So if you're doing this in Illustrator, you can create a layer that's called a spot white layer. Okay. So let's make this a different color so we can actually see it. Okay. So one of the things that you can do in Flexi is create a spot color down here and make it white so that the software will see it as a spot color. So one of the things, I've got a couple of down here, that's a fluorescent yellow and a fluorescent magenta. But let's come in here and I want to, I'm going to come up here to my color mixer and I'm going to select like a fluorescent green or a lime green, like this really lime green. So this way, you notice when it was white, I couldn't see it. Well, the software really doesn't care what color it is as long as it's named the right color for your spot color. So I'm going to take this lime green and I'm going to turn it into a spot color right here. Okay. So now I've done that. I've made a lime green. I've made it a spot color. And then I'm just going to click it and drag it and drop it down here into my color palette. So I now have, and you can actually even drag it to get it over to where you want it to be, kind of like right there. Now it's still called lime green. Okay. I can actually come in here. And then what I'm going to do is I want to show the palette. Okay. So I can come up here to my color specs, which opens up my color specs library. Now I can do it from right there, or I can also, this right here is my color specs icon. Click on my color specs icon. And then this lime green, I don't want it to be lime green. I've already got a lime green. I'm going to tell this one to be white. And I want to try to spell it the way that the RIP understands white. So Flexi's RIP understands white as capital W-H-I-T-E. So we're going to make that and make sure that it is a spot color. So now I've renamed that. So now this is white. So now when I send this over, let's say I have this and let's create a just an oval here. And we're going to come back here, order, and move this to the back. Okay, we'll make the oval blue so we can just kind of see what we're doing here. All right. Now, so when I take this image and I want to send it over to my, and I'm going to use Flexi's production manager now to send it over, Flexi's rip and print button to send it over to the production manager with this spot white that I've created. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit my rip and print button. So now it brings that up. Now, the one thing that you need to be able to do, so this is it. Now I can actually come in here and I can tell it to use the PNG white, but this is not a PNG, so this wouldn't work here. So I'm not gonna worry about using that. But if it was a PNG, you could actually do it right here. Okay. So what we're going to do here is I need to come over here to my color management tab. And right here, this is very important. Use printer spot colors. I have to check that, okay? And let's double check and make sure that my white is mapping to the white of the printer. And it is actually not right now. So what it is, because there was no white in here, actually this printer, I would have needed to name that spot 1. So even though I didn't name it the correct color, okay, and different printers, again, are going to call white different things. This one calls it spot 1, and I'd forgotten that, versus being white. But it really doesn't matter. As long as it's a spot color, I can tell it to map this white to spot 1. So when I say OK, and then we're just going to send this over to, we'll just change that there. We'll send this over to the production manager. Let's pull up my production manager here. Here's my Cobra Flex. We'll pull this up. All right, there's my design. Now, I am now telling it to print this as a spot color. Now, you remember before when I pulled up spot color, there was nothing there. Now, let's also come in here to this, and I need to tell it to use the driver options or spot color. I can do it either way. I can tell it to use it as a spot color or driver options. I'm going to say use driver settings, and I'm going to make sure this is set to spot color here. Let's go to our preview and let's see what we got. All right, so check the preview. Our cyan is going to show this right here, okay? And now notice there's nothing printing in there, okay? So let's see, what does white print like? Spot 1, and there's our white, okay? So this did exactly what we wanted. It took that white, and it's going to print, this is white, and it's going to print then the other colors as you see them on here, like that. So there we go. That's how you use the spot color to create white. Now, one of the things that you may want to have happen, though, is to print white underneath the cyan color, and then also print the white here. So if you'll notice, when we have that, it's not printing any white underneath any of the blue, and it's also not printing blue where the white is, okay? But for example, if we wanted white to print completely underneath this one here, okay? If I said under color, I could change the white to under color, but then it's going to screw up some other portions of it. If I say under solid, you'll notice what it does here is still prints that, and let's see what our white's going to print like. So under solid, actually, it does print that white now underneath everything that was white that has a color on there. So that may be another option and a better way to go for that. And again, a lot of these different things are working for this. I see we have a question about color separations. I will address that towards the end. Flexi's not great at doing color separations for screen printing, but we'll look at that and see what we can do. Okay. Now let's come back here to Flexi, and I'm going to bring in another image here that we've got. So this is, so this one right here, let me make sure how this was designed. Okay. So what we've got right here is a logo, a label like here. And what we want to do is we want to be able to print this. And the problem with this can be if you want to print this and send it to the production manager, there are a couple things we can do. One, we can make it a transparent PNG like I did previously with the Batman logo. But I can also create a transparent layer underneath this, okay? So what does that mean? How do we do that? Well, and this was also addressed. We did a webinar about 2 weeks ago on white ink printing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just going to kind of briefly show you how you would do this. There was a webinar 2 weeks ago that we did on printing white, and Jason Stone did a really good job of explaining, you know, under color and under prints and that kind of thing for this. But what you can do is under your arrange menu, I got to remember where this is. You can create that and go to underbase and tell it to do a solid underbase. So what we've just done, and then you can tell it either to choke it. Okay, so as you see, it's choking in, or you can even have it bleed it. So if you come the other way, it's going to bleed it outside of that. And let me put a color background on here so you can kind of see what it's doing. So the underbase, if we wanted to pull it in, as you see, it's going to choke that white. So that way, if you're printing this and you don't want the white to show, you can actually choke that in a little bit. And you can also do that in the production manager, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Or if for some reason you were doing something that you wanted it to bleed outside of that, then you could do that as well. And when you click your check mark, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a outline right here around this. So let's zoom here. So you can kind of see it's going to have a little bit of a spot choke on there. Now, what is that going to do for us? Okay. What that's done, and then also I need to make sure. So what that's done is it's added a white layer, a solid white layer underneath this sticker. Okay. And then also I need to make sure so that the top layer is done as an overprint. And what that means is it knows that there's a white layer underneath it, so it will print it correctly. So when I hit rip and print, if I've done this correctly, and I may have a 50-50 shot at having done it, when we go to the mapping, the underbase needs to be set to spot 1. Okay, so it sees the underbase is there. We're going to make it a spot 1. So this is how you're going to add a white layer to your own design. And then you're going to click OK. And then you also want to ignore overprint. We want to uncheck this box. Okay. If you don't uncheck it, then it's going to, that overprint that I just assigned to this, it's going to ignore it. Okay. So we want this unchecked. This is ready to go. So now we're going to send it. And then let's see if I did this correctly. We've got our job here, okay? And then we're going to tell it to make sure that we're printing spot 1 on here. Let's make sure this is set to use the driver settings, okay? And then when we come here to our preview channel, uncheck that and check our spot 1. And there is my underbase spot that I made, okay? So it now will print that as a white layer underneath the C, M, Y, and K. So that really is the basics on creating jobs, creating white for printing onto either directly to a DTG, DTF printer, or trying to, you know, create whites. You can use this same process for using Mamaki or UJF Mamaki printers, Roland UV printers. You know, any of the UV printers that are out there that work with Flexi. Now, the one other thing I think I did not show you here, and let me go back here real quick and show you this. In the Flexi here, if you want to be able to choke that white layer in here, you're going to come over here to this tab here, and you'll notice there is a choke button here. And I can tell it with spot 1, I can double click spot 1 and tell it to choke it like a millimeter, or I can tell it to bleed, or I can tell it none, and it'll just print it exactly the size of the image. And then there's an option here to choke only the rip generated under the white data. That way, if you have white text on top of something, it's not going to choke that. it will only choke the white that was underneath the graphic that you generated using the transparency tab. That's what that means. All right. And then, so wanted to make sure, yeah, that you saw that. And there you go. So are there any other questions on that? So basically, depending on the printer, the DTF printer that you have, some of these things are going to be slightly different. It will all be basically the same principle. Creating the file and creating the PNG and all that kind of stuff is going to stay the same. What may change is the name of the white. What may change is the way you handle the spot colors, the spot color tab and the under color tab inside the production manager. But other than that, the file creation and all that kind of stuff is going to be basically the same. So somebody was asking about color separations. And let me show you kind of, let me pull this file up and see if I can do it. Actually, let me add this file directly into here. So it doesn't have the transparency behind it for color, the white layer behind it. So when you're doing transparent color separations in Flexi, you actually have this is actually your separations. So print as separations. Okay. So when you do this, you can set this right here, check it, and it'll print magenta, your cyan, your yellow, and your black. If you're trying to do this for screen printing, this may or may not work. Flexi does not do halftones well at all. So if you're trying to do this to do separations for halftone printing, you will basically need to do that in Illustrator or another software to be able to have the halftone printing set up. But you can, print separations in color, just different, that's going to be how that's going to show. So you can tell it just to print your black separation. And again, this doesn't really have much black, but it's going to show, and it will print that as a color separation. So that's kind of where you would do that, is on this separations tab right there. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Looks like somebody may be typing right now. But okay, thank you on that. Well, Annette, did we have any other questions, or that's about all that I have?
We'll give folks a minute here. If you have anything, any questions about other Flexi topics, feel free to type them in the chat now. And that.
All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully everybody understands, how the DTG and DTF, would work. You basically just add the printers right here and find your device and add it in. I'm just using this one because it's one that I've worked with fairly often, and I know it pretty well as far as how it handles the colors and that kind of thing. So if there are no other questions, which it doesn't look like there's anything going on right now. And again, remember the white ink workflow. We did that the other day with a, which basically is a very similar presentation to what I did today. You can go to our YouTube channel and find the one that we did on the white ink workflow. And we did a little bit more detail on on creating the white and different things like that.
Someone's typing. We'll give it just a second. Will Flexi ever add for color separation? I love Flexi. Thanks, Steve.
I've asked about that. At this point, I don't know. I keep asking. I'm telling them that there are a lot of screen printers out there that could use the halftones and the color separations. But unfortunately, the market for that probably is not as large as some of the other things that we're designing things for. So that's probably lower on the agenda than some other things, but hopefully we will get that in there one day. But as of right now, I don't see it on the horizon anytime soon.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us for this DTF DTG webinar. Our next webinar will be about using Flexi for small desktop UV printers, which is a topic we've never covered before. That'll be 1 week from today, and we hope to see you all there. We'll have a link to the sign up for that webinar in the follow-up email that you'll receive later today. Please make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any webinars or other announcements. You can sign up for that on our website. Thank you again for attending. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time. And thank